What is up, YouTube? It's Paul, and I'm back with something a little bit different today. Not something that I've never done, but it's not a gameplay video. It's actually a ratings video, and it's a different kind of ratings video because I don't know that these players are actually going to be in MLB 17. But today is Wednesday, January 18th, and the Hall of Fame announcement's about to come down. It hasn't come down just yet. However, thanks to the great work that the bbhoftracker.com does, we have an idea of who might make it today. And so one of the guys who is tracking very well to make it is Jeff Bagwell. And of course, he already has a card, so we're not concerned with that. However, two new guys are very much tracking to get in. A couple others could, but I'm focused on the two who, through I think 56% of the ballots, are in, and it would take kind of a lot of the remaining ballots to not go for them to not get in. So I feel comfortable that we can assume that these two guys are in. If they're not, who cares? You know, it does. I mean, who cares, because I'm still making the video, obviously, but I feel comfortable that they can get in. And plus, even if they don't, it doesn't mean they couldn't get into MLB 17, but I thought now would be a good time to highlight them because they're likely to be inducted to the Hall of Fame today. So, two new cards that we're looking at, and I'm going to start with Tim Raines, who is having a great day. What I did here was took one of these all-time rosters. I pushed all the ratings down so that I didn't, spoil it immediately. And that way you kind of get the look and feel of the player. I don't have to worry about doing the appearance stuff, and we can focus on the attributes. So, let me state first that the way I do it is the way they currently do it, which I've been told is for a legend player, which is what these would be, it is based on their career with the team that the card is for, right? So, it doesn't matter for someone like Tony Gwynn, that's his whole career because he was with the Padres. But for, Jack McDowell, it's with the White Sox. So it's just his time with the White Sox. It's not the specific year. And that's why some of the cards might be a little bit underwhelming, because it takes into account, 8-10 years worth of time, whereas the flashback cards are just flashback to a certain year. At any rate, we're looking at Tim Raines from 1979 to 1990 with Montreal. I think he had another little stint later in his career. It really wasn't pertinent for me to get it in. I think it was like a 50-game sample or something. It wouldn't have altered the numbers, so I honestly didn't really account for it. What we're dealing with here is a guy who came in. He's a left fielder. One thing I want to see if this did it. They didn't do a secondary position to put him in. He could get secondary position of second base. He came up as a second baseman. He played a little second base in the majors. I don't know if they'll go for that, but it could be kind of interesting and cool if they did. So, let's talk a bit about Tim Raines here. First off, 5th most ever stolen bases. So he's going to be a speed cheeser's dream. Not necessarily bunting. Well, we're hoping that they fix bunting a little bit in 2017, make it more difficult. But even if they do, somebody like Tim Raines should have that ability paired with his speed. But even if you're not necessarily a bunter, you're just somebody who likes to be aggressive on the base paths, this is a guy who would be right up your alley. He had an 86% success rate with Montreal. That is, guys, I mean, that's disgusting. A 72 to 74% area is where you're breaking even statistically in terms of it being smarter for you to run than to not. And the fact that he was at 86% made him such a valuable asset on the base path. So we already knew that, about 62 stolen bases per 600 plate appearances. However, he's also a really good hitter. And, he's kind of overshadowed by the fact that Rickey Henderson was there, being the best leadoff hitter ever in that same overlapping era. And so that kind of took away from Tim Raines' shine, but thankfully he's finally getting it thanks to a lot of work on the internet and to guys like Jonah Carey, who have been out there beating the drum, letting folks know that, yes, this is a Hall of Fame caliber player. So I think he's going to get in today. Let's dive into the ratings. First things first, his verse left numbers. We're going to move the contact up to 90, and the power will be 53. And let me give you some numbers to back that up. Whoops, went way past. He had a .301 batting average and just a 9% strikeout rate versus lefties, a 139 ISO, and about 13 homers per 600 plate appearances against lefties. So not much of a power guy, a little bit above average there. Power numbers, ISO numbers were not super high from 1979 to 1990. So 139 ISO today we kind of laugh at. Anything below 150, even today, when power, before 2016, when power was kind of in a little bit of a down period, we would still laugh at pretty much anything that was under 150 in terms of being quality. But 139 in Tim Raines' era was a little bit above average. So he's going to get a 53 power against lefties there. And then, of course, the batting average 301 was great. The 9% strikeout rate. I mean, the guy made tons of contact. Now, here's where it really gets interesting, and this kind of surprised me. By the way, he is a switch hitter. So it's not that surprising, but usually, even as a switch hitter, a guy has a favorable side. That's not the case for Tim Raines. Let's jump over to his right-hand side, and I've got him virtually the same. I've got him 90 against contact against righties, and then 48 power against righties, because he had a 301 average and a 9% strikeout rate versus righties. Yes, the exact same numbers. And a 135 ISO, and about 8 homers per 600 plate appearances. So he was more gap power against righties, but that's a 4 points difference in ISO. ISO, by the way, for those that don't know, is just slugging percentage minus batting average. It basically takes out your singles and gives you an idea of the kind of extra base power that you have. And so, I mean, he's virtually identical, and you can use him against righties and lefties equally with that great speed. And we'll get to his defense in a moment. So a lot to like here. Let's talk about his vision. I already mentioned the 9% strikeout rate against righties and lefties, which means he had a 9% strikeout rate. That is fantastic. He was actually 18th in strikeout percentage for his era, with a minimum of 4,500 plate appearances. So that's pretty darn good. I think the qualified amount of candidates, when I took 1979 through 1990, put minimum 4,500 plate appearances, was like 95 batters. So a decent sampling, and he was 18th. So he was in the upper echelon, and so I'm going to end up giving him a 92 plate vision here. You take somebody like a Tony Gwynn, who gets 99. I think George Brett's was really high. I think like a Wade Boggs would be really high as well. As I'm thinking about it right now, this might be a couple ticks high, but I'm sticking with it because I did all the research. And what I need to do, by the way, this is just a note for myself, is I need to take a little bit better notes so I can have backup, because I'm doubting myself, except when I do the work, I feel very confident in the numbers I put out, and I wish I had a little bit stronger backing here, because I remembered, you know what it was? I do have a note here. He was 7th in batting average, so that's why the contact numbers are so high, and I want that vision to be there. I know vision is mostly about strikeouts, but I think when you have a contact guy like this, you want to pair the vision and the contact so that he's able to consistently hit the ball. For his discipline, this is where he's really surprising, because he's not a huge power threat, yet he was a tremendously disciplined hitter. He was 13th in walk rate, 12th in, excuse me. He had a 13% total walk rate, and that was good for 12th in baseball, again, among those players that had minimum 4,500 plate appearances from 1979 to 1990, and thus, I also gave him a 92 discipline. So a lot of symmetry in his numbers, right? The 90-90 contact, the 92-92 vision and discipline. That's just the kind of, like, he was just a really balanced hitter, and this is the areas that he was strongest in. So that's where I really focused his ability. Now let's get over to some of the other factors. Now, despite being a speedy guy who is Hall of Fame worthy, for some reason I think the speed is what people associate defense with for him, and they think he's a great defender. He wasn't a great defender. He was an all right defender. The simple fact is he was in left field for a reason, right? You put your best overall defender in center field, and then you put your best arms in right field, and then the rest kind of maybe matriculate over to left field. And so I don't think he would be an overwhelmingly great fielder, at least from a fielding ability standpoint, but he would make up for it in reaction. Obviously, the speed did help there, and so I gave him an 80 reaction to go with that 70 fielding ability. The arm was solid, but not overwhelming. I gave him a 75 for strength. He had some great years with assists, and then a 77 on the accuracy. These I'm less confident in among everything when it comes to these older players. Yes, I did see Tim Raines play, but not at a level where I'm as analytical as I am now. And so, you know, if they have better means over at San Diego Studios of figuring out these defensive numbers, I will defer to them a little bit. But this was the best I could do. Did some research, tried to read some articles about it. There's no scouting report that I could look at that said, you know, he graded out like this. This is just me going off of some research that I was able to do. And I feel confident about it, but not so much so where I say, oh, you can't touch these. This is just based off the research that I did. Speed, obviously, is where things really turn for this card and would probably push him into the diamond level. I'm giving him a full-out 99 speed and a 99 steal and a 99 aggressiveness. I mean, I don't really know why we won it. Maybe if Ricky Henderson were out, and he had a card and you put him at all 99s, then maybe you put Tim Raines at 97s to suggest that, you know, Henderson's the very best and Tim Raines is second best. I'd be okay with that, but we don't have a Ricky Henderson card, and Tim Raines was an amazing base runner, and so I think that needs to be reflected. And so hopefully I've not oversold it here, but you can disagree. Feel free to in the comments and let me know why. By the way, if you disagree with any of this, anytime I'm doing these ratings episodes, I'm completely okay with that. But please give your reasoning why. Don't just say, oh, he should be a 42 arm strength and then not say why. Let me give me your thoughts on it, and we can have a discussion. I'm completely open to that. Durability, gave him an 82. He had some big game seasons, but he also missed some time. Now, he did miss some time for some nefarious reasons as well. For those of you that don't know, there was a bit of a cocaine issue with Tim Raines. The 80s were an interesting time. There were players being suspended for drugs, not the way you think about these days when they're suspended for PEDs. They were suspended for illicit drugs. And there was a cocaine epidemic that really struck baseball. You know, if you think about what cocaine does, it can be a bit of an amphetamine for players, probably to get them through the 162 game grind. Now, it's obviously not a wise one to use because of its destructive properties, but I could see how they might see it as useful in getting through the grind. At any rate, I couldn't quite give them, you know, too high of a durability because of some time missed, whether due to injury and also due to suspension. Not that that needs to necessarily factor into his durability, but to account for the games played. I don't know exactly what the times that he was on the DL. I don't have a comprehensive DL list of the 80s and 90s, although I do have a website that I can rely on for some information, and I also don't know exactly how often he was suspended. So I thought this was a decent middle ground to account for the fact that, yes, there were times that he missed during the games, and there were times that he was suspended as well. On his batting clutch, that's runners in scoring position, he gets a 70. He was solid. Let me see if I have data here. Nope, I didn't write it down. Sweet life, Paul. But I remember that it was a little bit lower. Like, first off, he's not a major run producer, right? He was a top of the lineup sort of guy, table setter. So he didn't have huge runners in scoring position numbers, and that's all that goes into batting clutch. So that's all I looked at. His bunting, this is a total guess, y'all. And you know what? I am looking at his player type, speedy table setter in the 80s and 90s, and making some assumptions here. And so I just went with good, not great. I went with 75 and then 80 on the drag. I'm just being honest with y'all. I don't know how strong those are. And if you have anything to the contrary, I'd be very open to hearing about it, because I just don't have a lot of opinions on how well guys bunted back in the day. Hell, I don't have very detailed opinions on how guys bunt today, because I don't care about bunting. But anyway, this is the card, and let's see what it is. Again, I always do these with y'all, so I don't know what it's gonna be. And if the overall is crazy, well, we'll see. It ends up being an 89. So that's a little bit interesting to me. I thought maybe it would be a little bit higher, but we're going to go with it. I mean, this is how I feel he should be. I'm not going to gas it up to, a bunch of points here and there just so that it's a diamond. I don't think that just because he's in the Hall of Fame, he has to be a diamond. His player type, for me, over the course of his career with Montreal, comes out to an 89, and we're going to go with that. So again, 90s on the contact, very similar power, good vision, discipline. This is one of those cards where if you are putting him in left field, I do think it would probably play up better than an overall, right? An 89 overall, that's a solid gold, but he might, depending on your play type, play at a diamond caliber sort of guy. And if they did give him that secondary position of second base, then the fielding wouldn't be as important. Like I would rather have a higher field in left field than I would at second base. So if he did have the secondary position of second base, I'd gladly put this guy at second base and put him at one of the top 2 spots in my lineup, or at the 9 spot, depending on where you bat the pitcher, or the 8 spot. It would be a fun card, though. It'd be a really fun card. Switch hitting, can hit from both sides the same, with great speed. So that's Tim Raines. The other guy who is very much expected to get in today is Pudge Rodriguez. And of course, this would be a great card. Before we even get into the numbers, first I'm just looking at him, I'm like, yeah, it would be a good card. But the fact that we get another great catcher, which I don't think there are a ton of, that would certainly make him an appealing card to me. I would be so eager to see where he would be, just because he's a catcher. He'd be a stud. He'd be great behind the plate if they improve some of the catcher defensive dynamics in 2017. And his excellent blocking ability was actually, really came into effect. That'd be fantastic. So let's dive right in. Let's start with the contact versus left. I got it at a 91, and his power is at a 66. Now, numbers for you. You got a 303 batting average. Oh, quickly. 1991 to 2002 is the time that he spent with Texas, and so that's the period of time that we're focused on. 303 average and a 12% strikeout rate against lefties, 184 ISO, and 22 homers per 600 plate appearances. Now, here's an interesting thing, right? I just did the Tim Raines numbers, and I was telling y'all about how 139 ISO isn't as bad as it sounds. Conversely, a 184 ISO isn't quite as good as it sounds. A 184 today certainly plays very well, even with last year's power surge. That's a really good number. But in the era that he played in, commonly referred to as the steroid era or juiced ball era, a 184 is still very good. Please don't get me wrong on that. But it is not top of the heap sort of stuff. Even at catcher, it wasn't necessarily the best power hitting catcher out there. So a 66 power, I think, is fair. By the way, he had a 7-year stretch of at least 300 batting average against lefties. So he was able to make a lot of quality contact against lefties. Against righties, I went with 94, so just a little bit above. And for the power, 69. So again, almost the same. Whoops, I don't know why I went so far past, but a little bit better. And what I love here, if we were to get this card, is that you'd have a right-handed catcher who can hit righties. So he'd be really good against lefties, but he's actually better against righties. And I love when you have a catcher that you don't have to platoon and who has great defense. That gives you that extra spot on your bench. Now, not everyone platoons their catcher anyway, but for a lot of folks out there who do, this would be a card I think you just play against everybody no matter what. Now, let's get into his vision and discipline. For his vision, I gave him an 84. And for the discipline, just a 33. He didn't walk much. And that deals with your walks. And so, he had a 5%. He had a 5% walk rate. Now, he was 12th in batting average and 24th in strikeout rate overall among 83 guys who had at least 5,000 plate appearances from 1991 to 2002. So that's what we're dealing with here. Meanwhile, his 5% walk rate was 3rd worst. So he was 81st among those players. And that's why the discipline is so low. But the great batting average and the solid strikeout rate, that yields a nice 84 plate vision. Now, I I did juice the contact a little bit because his average came without many walks. And so when you're getting a walk, obviously that's a plate appearance, but it's not an at-bat. And so if you have a great walk rate, you know, you can kind of not, I don't want to say gain your batting average, because obviously it's still a very positive effect, but you're not having as many at-bats while also still playing. And so I think that somebody who can maintain such a high average without walks, it should be rewarded. And so that's why I gave him 94, 91 on the contact. Now let's get to, oh, by the way, his 35 homer season, he had one 35 homer season. I believe that was the year he won MVP. Just to give you some context on what I was saying about the power, that was only the 167th best home run season for the era that he was in, 91 to 2002. If you just took all the seasons, split them up into individual seasons and looked, 35 homer season was 167th. And that's why his power numbers, while they would be amazing today, are only good for 69 and 66 in his era. Now, he did have a 286 average and a 160 ISO with runners in scoring position, so I gave him a 70 clutch. I took the notes on his runners in scoring position, but not Rains's for some reason. I'm a clown. Sorry, guys. Now, let's get into the fielding aspect is equivalent to what the speed aspect is for Rains. And for me, I'm going pretty much all in here. I mean, this was a guy who was so feared on the base paths that he was almost as valuable for getting players to not run as he was for throwing them out. The scare tactic, it's almost like a defensive back who establishes himself to the point where they don't even go to his side of the field anymore. Guys weren't even running, but he was also good at back picking. When they did dare to run, he would get them. So I'm maxing out pretty much across the board on his defense here. Not pretty much, I flat out am. And maybe it's too much, but he's widely regarded as the best defensive catcher ever. And so maybe there's some tweaking to keep these in, 95, 94, 96, or whatever. That's fine. It's a few points. I'm going straight 99s, and we can deal with it from there. His base running numbers actually wasn't a bad base runner for being a catcher who's not super speedy. I'll give him 55 there. Actually, excuse me. I gave him a 50 on the stealing, a 55 on his speed. And then aggressiveness was a 53, which I literally pulled out of my ass. Because it was basically in between the 50 and the 55. I'm not gonna lie to you guys. I'm honest. All right. Durability. He did have some durability issues. That comes with being a catcher, though. So I gave him an 80 there, which is still good, by the way. But he missed some time, and he would get nicked. He had some legitimate injuries, and so I just gave him an 80 there. Can't juice it too high, but some of it is like I don't know how they view it. Do they give catchers a little bit more credit in general just because that position is difficult, and so they gas it up a little bit relative to the rest of the fielders, or do they just judge them against everybody else? I don't know. I went with 80. I could hear maybe a 75. You know what? I'll go 77 just to be in between those two numbers. I think it's somewhere in that range, but let's just move it to that. That's fine. Bunting, who cares? Because he didn't really bunt, but we got to put a number in there. And bunting ability, 40. I don't know. He was in the American League too. Like, when the hell did he ever bunt? And a 30 drag bunt. Whatever. What the freak ever. Let's see. Do I have any other notes? Nope. I think that's it. So this is what we're dealing with Pudge Rodriguez. He was a total stud. One of the best catchers ever. A case probably made for the best catcher ever. I think I might have bench there. I haven't really looked at it. And let's see what that yields. That yields a 99. Now, it's probably that defense, and I'm okay with this, though. I really am. Maybe it's too high, but here's another thing, though. This is why we say don't get too hung up on overalls, right? Because just because he's a 99 doesn't mean that he's best player in the game eligible. or capable, I mean. Yes, the defense certainly inflates that, but it doesn't always play on the field, right? You've played enough of 2016, and hopefully it's better in 2017, but if it's not, catcher defense doesn't necessarily play that big of a role. So I thought he might get 99 because he has 5 categories here of straight 99s, and so that's where we're at. But I feel confident with this. I feel good about this ranking. Again, we can adjust them a little bit, but what you're still talking about here, let's do this. Let's do this just for an exercise. I still stand by what I did, but let's move them all to 92, just for S's and giggles. Okay, let's see what that does. Right, he's still in, whoops, wow, you're backing out. He's still a 99, and so it's not just that. It's that he's an elite player with elite defense. And so I still think no matter what, maybe you don't agree with him being straight 99s, they're all in the 90s. He was an amazing fielder. He had a brilliant arm. His reaction was tremendous, and his blocking was great. So you got to get them all in the 90s. You pair it with his amazing contact ability, and it looks like you got a 99 player. So I am comfortable with it. Let me get it back to where I have it, though. These are my final numbers, and this is what I believe. And he should get into the Hall of Fame today. Very deserving. And that's what I've got. So there's Pudge Rodriguez. And just to review one more time, here is Tim Raines. He's over at 89. Boom. And, of course, Jeff Bagwell is also expected to get in, but he already has a card. And I didn't want to speculate. There are 2 who are also close. And you know what? If they get in, Trevor Hoffman and Vlad Guerrero, if they end up getting in, they're currently under based on the tracker, but if they get a flourish of votes and they end up in, I'll come back and I'll make a video for them. But until then, hope you enjoy this. By the way, I do have one coming up on Jason Giambi and Roberto Alomar as well. Since they are in the game from the preview that we saw, I have already put out their ratings. I just need to make the video. So expect that either later today or tomorrow. Tomorrow being Thursday, January 19th or something like that. Anyway, thank you for watching. Hit that subscribe button. Plenty more to come throughout the winter, and I'm so excited for 2017. Peace.